Hi, everyone. It's Kelly from the Hub. I am here with Kevin Ressler, the president and CEO of United Way
Hello.
in Lancaster County. Hello. How are you, Kevin?
I'm, doing all right. With any luck, the 3-year-old behind me won't pop up too aggressively.
Well, she's so cute, so everyone will love her. So we're
Yeah.
going to talk today with Kevin about some personal stuff. He's the president and CEO of United Way, and he's been in this job for about 6 months.
hmm
So let's talk about this first. How has all of this been for you personally? You're home, you've got two girls, your wife's working too. Like how is all of this? How's juggling parenting and being a boss and all that stuff?
So, you know, um, I've been here since January 2nd. Before that, though, of course, I'm not foreign to Lancaster County. So I grew up in Lancaster, went to Conestoga Valley, kindergarten through 12th grade, and I've been after college and a year in San Francisco. I've been back in Lancaster since 2009, 2008. So, one of the things that was helpful is it would be very difficult to do this job if you didn't already know the community. And so, to some degree, it just felt like I'm switching seats at the same table. And I've been grateful for the opportunity to continue to support Meals on Wheels, as well as the experience that I had from Meals on Wheels to help me do a better job, I think, than I otherwise would have at the United Way in supporting agencies. And so there's a certain element of gratefulness that I have that I am in this role, in this time, in a community I'm deeply embedded in with relationships that I have that are established. And so at the risk of, so it's an odd thing a little bit because this pandemic is a global pandemic and it is awful. And what it is doing to individuals, right, whether that's a small business owner or someone whose family member has contracted COVID-19, whether or not they heal from it, or even uh, I had someone told me this morning that they have a friend whose mother passed away. And it is a perspective endearing thing. I said, so one, it was an interesting perspective because my immediate response, I think as many of ours are, is, was it COVID-19? And the answer came back no. And I said, it doesn't matter. It was still a COVID-19 death because there will be no funeral, there will be no viewing, there will be no memorial. If it matters for that family to have closure, to see the body, or I don't know any of those details, but that impacts everything. And so it's an odd thing for me to the United Way is having an opportunity to deliver in ways that COVID-19 is presenting. And I'm not happy about that, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to help in a distressing time. The same is true for Meals on Wheels, which I'm still on the board of, still supporting and active, and glad to be able to do that. And all that work I did for 6 years is able to be seen as we're glad we have a strong Meals on Wheels program now, considering seniors are the most at risk. At the same time, on the super personal level, it's tough. My wife works at Steepleview Lofts in downtown. It's a senior living facility. She manages that building. She's also the executive director of the Lancaster Downtowners, a senior villages to villages community. Her community is, it's a stressful time for her, and her community is in need of her to physically come every day. And so that means that I'm working from home and caring for a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, trying to make sure the 6-year-old's doing her kindergarten homework, whether it's on paper or the iPad, making sure as best as I can that the 3-year-old doesn't just park in front of a flat screen babysitter, uses the chalkboard, floor to ceiling, the little basketball hoop over there, trying to keep physically fit, gym class. So it is very tough. And at the same time, I have been very clear and consistent with this. We keep using this phrase that I keep hearing that we're all in this together. Nope, we're not. A number of us, individuals like myself and my family, are taking a dip into the nightmare that is other people's everyday life and was that way before. And if we don't do a better job of improving the way that we treat one another, compensate one another, care for one another will be the nightmare that they stay in for the rest of their life when I get to wake up and go back to a new normal that is designed around people with opportunities and privileges and vocations like I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I am doing my best of recognizing my own relative pain and struggle in this, whether that's mental health and physical fitness and all those various things, while also not thinking that I now exist at the bottom that so many others are forced to because of our social and societal structures. And so the last thing I'll just sort of say on this is I hope that we develop empathy. The difference between sympathy and empathy is this: sympathy is knowing that someone else is in pain and feeling bad about it. Empathy is being able to reach into your own self and remember a time that you were in like pain and to operate on a level with that individual that recognizes pain as real and personal, not as objective and to that other person. And so if we can leave this time with empathy and a willingness to re-engage with conversations, even as partisan as they get, around healthcare, around living wage, around other support structures that we have societally, then we'll be better for it. And I hope that those of us who have power and influence never forget the nightmare that we have when we reawaken.
Thanks. I think that's really important that, right, no matter how we are feeling, there are a lot of people out there who this is what they've always done. Absolutely. So both of us have been in service all of our lives, and we have taken that responsibility for ourselves. And where does where does that notion of service work come for you? Why have you always done this? I mean, you've taken lots of different kinds of roles, but why has service been the sort of leading force for you?
So I don't often talk too much about my sort of my faith or my faith journey, although that's certainly influential in it. I'm born and raised Mennonite. My grandfather in Tanzania was the first Mennonite bishop to take over from the missionaries in all of Africa for the Mennonite Church. My dad's father was a church planner, was basically asked to leave a conservative plain community because they believed that they should plant churches in areas that weren't churches, and the church hadn't had that calling as a church. And so my grandfather was considered arrogant to presume he would have a conversation with God. So I come from a bit of a rebellious streak too. But most of my aunts and uncles on both sides don't work directly in church work, but work for Oxfam and Save the Children and UNICEF and the United Nations and the European Union's project on Yemen. And that's uh, both sides of my family, my Tanzanian family and my United States family. So there's a cultural embedded nature within the Ressler and Kasari streams that says your finite life should be devoted to making the path wider for others who are less fortunate. And I would also say specifically the story I usually tell though is my dad and I were in the car. I think he picked me up from the park. I was playing basketball or something, and he talked about what he and my mother would be proud of. And I've got two brothers, and he said, you guys are smart, you're athletic, if you put your mind to it. I was probably in like 8th grade, so this is like the high school, it starts to count for real uh talk. You guys can do what you want if you put your mind to it, but it's important for you to understand what your mother and I will be proud of you for doing. And that conversation, what he said to me is, he said, I don't care if you're rich, I don't care if you're famous, I don't care if you're not. All we care about is that whatever it is you do helps other people. And it's been sort of a lighthouse to me, as I veer from it, it's my way back to the shore. And I've liked living a life according to that designation. It brings value and it pays me enough money to be able to survive, and not so much money that I start to lose touch with the reality of the lives of my neighbors. We live in a lower income neighborhood that we try to help our neighbors and be cognizant that being a part of a community shouldn't be a part of a uniform community. You shouldn't just live amongst people who have the same income as you or amongst people who have the same, racial, cultural background as you. We are diverse as human beings, and we should be. My dad always says he has this funny little belief that everybody goes to the same place when they die. And for those who don't know how or don't like to live amongst diversity, it will be hell. And for the rest of us, it will be heaven. And so it's important for us to learn in this life how is it that we are able to manage to be inclusive and to be encouraging and to be one with one another.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I've been thinking about leadership. We've all of us are leaders in our own way. Whether you're just leading one or you're leading 2001.
Yeah.
Has your leadership style changed since we've all been in this new way of life right now? Or is it different for you?
That's a little hard for me to say because I switched organizations. I went from 10 staff to 30 staff. So by nature, there's some change there. What I would say is I am conscientious of moving from a speedboat to a larger ferry. And the way in which I can manage that organization in the constituencies that I have are different. So, the public comments or discourse I make is different. And this is no different than when I ran for mayor, right? When I ran for mayor of Lancaster City, it changed the way that people responded to, looked at, and thought about what I said. People who yesterday thought that everything I said was great when I was a Mennonite pastor, all of a sudden I say the exact same thing, but because I'm a Democratic mayoral candidate, now I've said evil. And so you have to be mindful that the context you bring is beyond yourself. And so that's part of it. But the other thing that will not change and will never change is that I will continue to lead with the same ultimate goal, and that is to deliver the greatest opportunities I can for those who are the most disenfranchised. And that's where I want to start. I don't want to start from how do I best serve those who are most comfortable. And if people get better because of that, great, that's a nice ancillary benefit. I want to help from the bottom on up. And the reality is if you help from the bottom on up, you'll always help the top and everyone else anyway. It doesn't work the other way around. And I've often said, the worst thing they can do is be unhappy with me and take my job, and I'll find another place that I can help someone. And that's not an objective, but I'm not going to compromise helping my community in order to please someone whose objectives are not the best method to help the most amount of disenfranchised people.
Thank you. I have one last question for you. We're all looking to the future, whether it's reopening, whether it's what new normal is, all that stuff. So when you're looking in terms of your life and the life of United Way, what are you excited about and what are you anxious about?
Yeah, so thanks. That's a great question, and I like ending on it. And I'm going to start with anxious so that we don't end on anxious. So, organizations across the board, for-profit, nonprofit, are all figuring out their paths and their struggles. The United Way, 75% of our fundraising comes from pledges made through payroll deduction. So if people lose their jobs, the United Way is looked at to help them, but if they were a donor, we're less resourced to help them. So what am I anxious about from an organizational sense? Okay, let's think about how do we fundraise and what do we ask and who do we ask and how do we deliver our services in a way that's not just only thinking about money. I think there's so many other ways that we can provide resources. Like if I have someone who's able to, or our website, oneunitedlancaster.com, which has been a resource with a map on it of agency services, right? We're not saying we're doing the service, but we're connecting people through one vehicle there, right? Lancaster.com has a whole bunch of articles. This video will find its way to there. And it's about sharing the content that organizations are doing. That's a different thing than the United Way would have done in the past. But it's helping organizations get the word out through our, more people know us and have our email on their email list than some of the smaller agencies. Can we help promote that good work? And can we save an organization some marketing dollars because we're able to drive focus in a different way? I didn't give you $10,000 for going out and buying an advertisement, but every week we're sending, over like 15,000 emails of what were the top 5 articles on our website. That's helpful, right? Is it $10,000 worth? I don't know, but it's worth something. And so thinking about how do we respond by the anxiety in the community by providing new, better, unique ways, doing our best to be thought leaders and also to be conveners to provide the opportunity for people to find one another. That's an extremely important, but that's part of what we always do. We always found donors and help them to find the agencies and organizations that they really liked. But we need to do more on resourcing to support that anxiety. And one real specific tactical that I'm worried about is when the eviction moratoriums are lifted, there's a lot of people who haven't been able to make rent and haven't been kicked out of their houses because they weren't allowed to. And their landlords in some cases might be thinking about that and their plans. You did a great session on what landlords are allowed to do and not allowed to do. And hopefully they'll also think about it, what they can do and what they can choose to do. It doesn't have to just be, I'm allowed to kick this person out. Can you lower your rent? Can you work with it? Too often we have this sense of people, especially in the lower income, Section 8 housing or other, oh, they take from the government or they live off the government. And I often say, no, they don't. Their landlords do. Because their landlord is paying down a mortgage. Their landlord is building equity. They're not saving the money from the Section 8 voucher. It's their landlords who are living off that. And so this might be a time for the landlords to say, I can cut $100 off your rent. Like I can do that because I can afford to and because frankly, it's not my money. And then the other thing that I'll leave with is the hopeful part. And that hopeful part is that from government to nonprofit to for business, there's a lot of flexibility. And again, that conversation I said earlier about empathy. People right now are willing to see other people in a different way than they ever have before, right? So one of the things that we have in this country, and it's a negative, is a perception that a lot of people are poor because of personal choices and because they want to be or they don't care to be otherwise. The reality is that it's almost always systems. It's generational. It's the networks you do or don't have that are given to you by the parents that you have who happen to or happen not be connected in your community. That can get you that first job at 16, that builds your resume so that you can get to a better college, so that you can get a better job. The whole path is preset in so many ways before you ever get there. And a lot of us don't actually look at it that way. We look at it and say, this person didn't want to get a job. This person is, someone who's an alcoholic, we see that as, oh, this person chooses. No, they have a gene, right? And so what's the hope in that? The hope is that now that we're starting to realize my sibling, my cousin, myself lost a job to no cause of their own. They didn't show up late to a single day of work. They worked hard. They were the best person in their division, and the company can't pay them anymore. They're in a similar situation as all those other people before. The society and the systems around them have now put them in a place of pain. And what that means is that the supports that we're going to see moving from here forward now have a new understanding, a new awareness that my fortune is not my fortune just because of my hard work. It's my fortune because of a system that I exist in. And that means that my obligation is to go out and to reach out and to support those members in my community for whom the system hasn't worked as well. And if we get there, I'm going to finally feel comfortable about using that all in this together, because we'll be all in the prosperity together. And when we're all in the prosperity together, that's going to be the place that we want to end up in.
You know, we could probably talk for like the next 6 or 7 days about all this stuff, and I would love to, but we probably
Have me back. I'd love to come back.
Good. I'm so glad. Good. I have a lot of other things, and we'll talk about United Way, and we'll talk about how this stuff all works together. We are a partner of United Way, so we're going to certainly talk about that as well. So, but this has been awesome. Thank you. You've given me a lot to think about as always.
Thank
Kevin,
you so
you
much.
are fun to hang out with. So thank you, my friend, and I will see you again. Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Have
Bye.
a great day, everybody.